Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about how to plan your patio cover and how to take some measurements and how to lay it out and plan for the sizes and all that good stuff and what to look for. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, leave me a comment so you don't miss any of the future videos. This is all part of our Escaping Commie-fornia series. We're improving our house and improving everything that we have so that when we go to sell it, we can get our top dollar and we can sell it and get out of California. So we're going to start right now. Alright guys, if you've been watching the channel for a while, I apologize for not putting out more videos. We've had a lot going on. I've been working 80 hours a week and had quite a bit of stuff going on, and so I'm gonna try and get some more videos out on a little more of a regular basis. And this is going to be a follow-up for part 1 and part 2 of how to build a patio cover. I had a lot of questions, and I had some people reaching out to me and asking me how much it cost and how to lay something out and how to plan for it, how to measure things. So I'm going to do a quick little layout, a quick little description of what I did and what I was looking for and some things that you need to look for. Okay, so one of the first things that I decided to do, you need to take a look at the back of wherever you're going to build your patio cover. You need to look at your house and you need to decide first of all how high you want it. And then when you're looking at how high you want the patio cover, it all depends on where the eave of your house is. Alright, let's take a look at that right now. So right here, if you look at the eave on my house right here on this fascia board, that's about, I forget how high that is. I want to say it was 10 feet. What was that, 7, 8? No, not even 8. That was 8 feet. Okay? So I have 8 feet to where the eave of my house is. Now sometimes you have a higher eave or you might have a little bit of a lower eave, but I definitely didn't want my patio cover to be any lower than the 8 foot. So I didn't want to have the patio cover be underneath the eave of my house. So if you look on, if I show you this right here, typically you're going to want to attach your joist for your ceiling. You're going to want to attach it to the face. You're going to put a face board typically, or if you know where the joists, where the studs are in your wall, you're going to put those hangers and you're going to screw those hangers directly into the studs that are in the wall. I have a stucco house, so it's really hard to find those studs. You can't use a stud finder for those, and I don't want to be poking holes in my new stucco. So I also wanted to have a little bit of a higher ceiling, so I chose to go to my fascia. Now the reason you want to go to the studs in your wall is because that's where the strength is. You need to tie in, this is a load, technically a load, it's going to support the weight of your roof. You want that to be in the strong part of your wall. So you need to have these hangers, these Simpsons ties or whatever brand you get, need to be screwed into those studs on the wall. If you don't, then you need to put a fascia board up and bolt that with long lag screws and tie those into the studs that are inside the wall, and then you can nail those things to the fascia board. Okay, now I decided to go straight to my fascia. Now that fascia was just nailed on, which is not super strong. I went ahead and put, if you watched part 2 on how to build a patio cover, I did a close-up, and it's kind of hard to see in the dark again. I apologize for the lighting, guys. But I put lag screws into my ceiling joists that are up here inside this ceiling. So I lag screwed this fascia board to those ceiling joists, and that made this thing super strong, and I was able to screw all of these joists to this fascia board. Okay? So you need to decide where you're going to attach your fascia board or where you're going to attach your ceiling joist for your patio cover. If you can go to your fascia board, or if you're going to create a fascia board, you're going to go straight to your wall. A really good example of somebody that just put a video out is Heath from Red Poppy Ranch. Just did his patio cover, and if you watch him, he puts all of his hangers directly on the siding of his newly built house. But he knew exactly where those studs were that he had built himself, and so he was able to screw those hangers directly into the studs that were in his wall, and so he didn't have to have another fascia board bolted, screwed to the side of his house. Okay. I'll show you the other patio cover that I did around the side of my house, and I did exactly that. So come along. Okay guys, here's a good example right here of where I actually put a fascia board, and I put lag bolts right into the studs that are inside my wall. There's a lag bolt there. There's a lag, I missed that one there. There's a lag bolt here. and so on. Okay, so I had to create this fascia board, and then I put my hangers directly to this fascia board, and then hung my ceiling. Now, I know you'll probably get a few comments. They're going to say, "Oh, you shouldn't have used 2x4s." Well, this is only a 5-foot span. 2x4s were fine. It's not a very big piece, and so I used 2x4s. On my main patio cover, I use 2x6s because it's a longer span. We'll talk about that in a minute. So when you're planning your patio cover, you want to decide how high you're going to go. You want to decide how wide it's going to be, and then you want to see how deep it is. So when I measured this, I had a patio cover that was existing that I wanted to cover most of it. When I measured, it was about 20 feet wide, and it was just about 8 foot deep, except for this one little section right here that it kind of had a little design to it. I wasn't worried about covering every last bit of it, so I didn't worry about this. I wanted to cover the main part, and the main thing that I was trying to accomplish was to keep the rain from dripping off the side of my house and splattering on my brand new double pane windows and my double pane doors. And so I needed to cover all of this section, which is about 20 foot wide. Okay, so when you're planning that, I wanted to make sure that you want to use have as little waste on wood as possible, right? So lumber comes at 8 foot, 10 foot, 12 foot, some 14, 16s, and then occasionally 20 foot sections, right? So I wanted to make as much use of the wood as possible, as well as what I was going to be topping it with. I used 10 foot 2x6s. 2x6 was strong enough, and I put them on, these are 24-inch centers, okay? And, I'm sorry, are these 24s? Yeah, I did 24-inch centers. I forgot if I did 16s or not. 16s are going to be a little bit closer if you're going to be walking on there, if you're going to have any more weight on there. But I wasn't going to have any more weight up here except for just a roof ever. So I used 10-foot 2x6s, and that took me out far enough. So if your patio is under 10 feet, the other thing you want to consider is you make sure that you have your overhang far enough that it's going to not drip on your concrete, that's going to drip in the grass, okay? And so this is actually going to cover all the concrete, and the water will drip off in the grass and it won't splash, all right? So 10 footers, and then my span, I wanted to center my center post. I wanted to center it with the center of the door, okay? So I did a center line with this door, and I went to the sides, and I found that I was able to do 10 feet to either side centered on that door, and it covered both sides, and it looked very, very even and centered on the back part of my house. Okay, so the best thing to do is to draw it out. Draw a rough just a sketch of your house and put some measurements on there, and then just draw a little rough square drawing with some measurements on there, so you kind of get a visual picture of how it's going to look. Okay. Now, I didn't put these at 10 foot. I put these at about 8.5 feet, because I wanted to have a little bit of an overhang. I didn't want these right on the edge, okay? And I wanted to have these I wanted to have the pylons right up against the concrete. Now, I didn't. There's a lot of people will just take a concrete lag bolt, and they'll drill a hole and go straight into the concrete and put these supports. And I could have done that, but if you notice, there's a crack right here in my patio. This corner of the patio has settled and had leaned a little bit and settled down in the ground. This patio was only probably 4 inches thick of concrete. So I didn't feel that this patio was built well enough, especially after seeing how it had. I bought it this way. It had already settled before I got it. So I didn't want to put any load bearing on a 4-inch piece of concrete. Now, I tried to do this to code. I looked at the city codes and their recommendations for how to build a patio cover, and they recommend that you go 24 inches deep in the concrete. And so I went 336. I went a foot above, and I went 24 inches down into the dirt. And it's a 12-inch. I'm sorry, that's a 12-inch tube. And then I did 10 inches above. So that's to code. And then I used 4x4s, and I didn't go any further than about 8.5 feet on my 4x4 span. If you go any further than about 8 feet, you need to do a 4x6 4x6 instead of a 4x4. Okay. So when I had done this, I planned out 10 feet to either side, and then the 10 feet with about a 1.5 foot overhang. Draw it out, guys. It's really easy to do, and then you can make the maximum use of your wood, and you have very, very little waste. I think the only waste that I had was when I cut these. These were 8-footers, and I actually cut them to about almost 7 foot tall, about 6.5 feet tall, and that was about the only waste I had on this whole thing. Okay, so now we can talk about the slope. So for every foot that you go, you want to drop about 1/4 inch. And that's a rule of thumb for good drainage, like in a shower pan or any kind of just a gentle roof pitch. 1/4 inch for every foot. So 10 feet gave me 2.5 inches of drop. So if I measure the altitude or the height of this edge over here, it's about 2.5 inches lower than that over there. Okay, and that'll give you plenty of runoff. The water will never run up; it'll always run off the side of your patio, obviously, right? But some people want to make it almost flat. And that's the other thing to consider too, is that if you've got like I have a 10-foot span, so 2.5 inches lower over here made it about 7. See, I'm 6'1", so 7.5 feet tall. So I lost a couple of inches right there. If you're going to have a really long patio cover, you need to really consider what your slope is going to be. Okay, now let's talk about what you're going to roof it with, what your ceiling is going to be. Now, I chose this plywood that I had. I got this, it was a waterproof plywood, really expensive stuff. I got it, it was gently used off of a job site. They were going to throw it away. I got the stuff that was 5/8 inch thick. You need to use at least 1/2 inch, but highly recommend 5/8 for the strength, especially because I did 24 inches. If you're going to do 16 inches, we'll talk about that in a minute. If you're going to go 16 inches, you can get away with 1/2 inch, but it's highly recommended that you go 5/8. 3/4 is like way overkill. You could go 24 inches on that. Now the reason we go 16 or 24 is because on plywood is 4 foot by 8 foot, right? So 24 inches, oh my gosh, always. Okay, so if you look, it's kind of hard to see. I have a little bit of an overhang right here. And then I had to measure 24 inches from here all the way over to here. So that way the plywood would end up right in the center of this joist. Okay? So you want all of your plywood to butt up nice and tight. And you want it to all match, and you don't want to have any seams showing. And you want to be able to screw in for support, for the weight, for the load bearing. Okay? I did plywood because I'm going to paint all this, and wasn't super. I didn't care too much about what it looked like, but I had to be really careful when I went to do my roofing. That when I put the shingles down, that I used the 1/2 inch shingle nails, and I didn't use the 1 1/4 that they normally sell. So it took me a while to find those. That way I didn't have nails coming through my plywood. Okay, that's really important for later on when we talk about the roofing part, the roofing aspect. So I got this for free. I got these 2x6s on clearance at Lowe's. Some of these were, I talked about this in the last video. I got these pressure treated stuff. You know, some of the ends were kind of chewed up. Some of the corners were, some of the edges were kind of rounded off where it was at the edge of a log. I just flipped those to the top and they all look great. I got these for 20 cents on the dollar. It was amazing. So go to the Lowe's clearance section. You can get stuff. I got $270 worth of wood for 40 bucks. It was really cheap. It was awesome. So, okay, I'm gonna try and keep doing this video, guys, while my dog is causing a bunch of ruckus. So I use plywood. Plywood doesn't look as nice. A lot of people are gonna want to do a tongue and groove or a shiplap, and you're gonna buy that, but it's gonna be quite a bit more expensive. I haven't priced that stuff out. But I was, like I said, I'm just going to paint this stuff, and I was careful with my nails so the nails didn't come through. And so I have just a plain plywood look to it. Not as high dollar, not as fancy, or not as finished looking, but it's still going to look pretty clean, especially with the red, with the cedar joist. It never fails. It never fails. Try to do a video and the neighborhood comes alive. Another reason we're getting out of commie-fornia. Anyway, do a tongue and groove. or a shiplap, and then it's going to look really, really nice. So then you need to also plan out how you're going to space that. You want to make sure you're going to overlap your wood by half, 3/4 of an inch or so. I went actually an inch all the way around, and so you need to make sure you measure accordingly to space your, to measure your plywood with a 1-inch overhang over there, and make sure you adjust your joists appropriately so that the end of that plywood lands in the center of that piece over here. Then your next piece of plywood continues on down. Okay? Now shiplap you can get, I mean those are going to come in 12-foot sections or tongue and groove, and that stuff looks really, really nice, but it tends to be pretty a little bit spendy. Okay, so the next thing we'll talk about is price. Typically between the 2x6s, the 4x4s, these steel joist hangers, these are hurricane ties that I have up here. I have hurricane ties on all of these to keep them all solid. Between my concrete with the plywood, and then I put tar paper down, and I did shingles. And I think I used 6 packs of the shingles. I used 1 roll of the 1.5 rolls of the tar paper. I think with everything said and done, a patio like this is a 10x20, which is a pretty good sized patio cover. I think normally all of this stuff would probably be, so I'll tally all that stuff up to what that normally would have cost, and I'll put that down right here in the screen. I'll put it right there, and that will be the grand total for what this cost me and then what it would normally have cost me. So depending on how resourceful you are, if you could get some stuff on closeout, discounted at Lowe's or whatnot, if you can pick up some good used plywood somewhere, you can save yourself a ton of money. Okay. Another way to do it a little bit cheaper is to use the rolled roofing, the flat stuff that comes 32 inches, 34 inches wide. You roll out your tar paper and you roll out the big rolls of that stuff. That's a little bit cheaper than using the actual shingles. I use shingles on this so it match the roof that I have up here. Let's do a quick review. Draw this out. Draw out your distances and figure out how many joists you want, how long of a patio cover that you want, how far out it's going to go. Let's say you have a 6-foot patio and you're going to go 12 feet wide. You can buy 12-foot 2x6s and cut them in half and have no waste. And then you got to add on the fascia plate. You don't have to put a fascia on. If you look at Red Poppy Ranch, he did a nice little scroll work on the end, but then he also put blocks in between here, and you have to put a block in to make sure these things are square and solid. Or you put a fascia board on and you nail them all in, and that squares up the box. Okay? If you do the blocking, then you can do a nice scroll work on the end like Heath at Red Poppy Ranch. Go check his channel out and check out his latest video on his patio cover, and it came out really, really nice. And now on his roofing, he went and got some reclaimed wood and laid it all the way across there, and then he put metal corrugated tin roofing, and it looked all antique and totally awesome. So there's a lot of ways that you can roof one of these things. You put the slats up. You don't even have to put them side by side, but he did, just to make it more of a solid roof. And then putting the tin on top. I think he laid some tar paper down, and he put some house sheathing on top of that, just to kind of give it a little more of a waterproof barrier. And then he put the corrugated tin on top of it, and it came out looking really, really cool. So once we paint this, it's going to look really nice. We're going to paint it probably the same color as the face on the house. It'll all blend in. It's going to look really nice. Back to reviewing. Draw it out. Decide the dimensions that you want. And then you can just go down to the local lumber yard and you can price out each one of those pieces, and you can get an actual cost of what you're going to do. Back to the foundation really quick. No matter what kind of ground you're in, if you're in rocky ground or if you're in soft loamy clay, whatever you're doing, you want to have a solid foundation. You want to have a good concrete base in here. Sometimes you can take a pole and you can bury the pole in the ground, but that may rot over time, and it can settle over time, and you really want to do a concrete base right there. Okay, so we talk about roofing. You can choose the rolled roofing. Whatever you do, you need to really put some tar paper down, and that will be a vapor barrier before you put your shingles down or your rolled roofing or your tin. So there's or you can do shingles. If you've got a source for cedar shingles that are really cheap. My voice is getting bad. If you've got a source for cedar shingles that are cheap, you can put those on and that'll look great as well. All right. You just have to make sure to put that tar paper down. Let's talk about hardware. Now, all of the screws, I said this in my last video, all of the screws that I used on this were deck screws. Those are coated to be used outside in decks, especially in pressure treated stuff. That way they don't corrode and rust away. If you use regular drywall screws, guaranteed 5-6 years those things will start rusting away, especially if they get any moisture on them, they're exposed to the elements at all. Those things will rust away and turn brittle and fall apart. So you really need to go ahead and spend the extra money. They're about double the price of what a regular drywall screw is, but you need to use deck screws that are coated for outside use, and they'll last 20 years. Okay guys, thanks for watching. I hope that answered all of your questions. If you have any further questions, feel free to email me at hiddenvalleyhomestead18 at gmail.com. Drop a comment down in the bottom, and I read all those. If you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. That really helps us out. Hit the like button, or hit the not like, but if you hit the not like button, tell me why, and that way I can improve our videos. If there's something else that you want to see or something else that I missed, please let me know. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next video. Okay.